It was a little long ago, almost in January beginning, but we have looked at this particular dashboard and we were uh, just focusing on some of the analysis that is going through in this dashboard and what could have been done better otherwise. So that those were the lines which we were started this discussion. We have covered some of the aspects already. We have seen the overview tab. So to quickly recap in about a minute. So there are mainly three major spends: car, air, and hotel. And we have these three areas, and we have seen how they trend across few years, few months in the past. And this is basically expenses related to sales people traveling to make deals, etc., to various countries for their accommodation, travel, all of that stuff. And this is a summary tab, which we have already gone through. And we have noticed here US, especially, and US and air are basically the major cost that occurs to them, this particular company. And we have covered the traveler tab. There's nothing much interesting here. And we have also seen a air overspend tab here. So this is basically for each of the regions and each of the airlines at which we use, how much are we overspending when compared to the logical lowest price that we could have gotten the ticket for that particular travel arrangement, right? So, and we have seen also some of the airlines where we are getting good amount of how the tickets which you are purchasing for that particular airline are distributed in terms of the price negotiation segment that which we got. So how much percentage are we getting discounted fares? How much percentage are we getting negotiated fares because of some discussions, etc. All of that stuff. We have also discussed here some interesting aspects in the past that just increase in spend doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. We have to correlate that to with if it is also correlating to increase in revenue, etc. All of that stuff, and that will be basically used to assess if the spend is justified or not. So let's move on from here on. So let's quickly get to this particular tab. This is as it looks, it's a basic visualization of all the air travel. So since air is a major segment that which we have seen, this is some additional information on the air travel. And what you see here is a map of all the routes that the salesperson has taken from various across cities and countries. Each orange dot is a destination, and each green dot is a origin station, airport. So, and we have the same amount split up here by origin and destination and the route themselves. So, and couple of quick things that we can see here. I don't know if it is very visible here, but there is a very small section. Let me give it a second, actually. Okay. If you would see, there is a heat map here that is for each path, it is coloring depending upon the number of flights that which we have taken in that particular route. And there is a very specific section here. You can see tinted orange. So this is the area where if I hover on any path, we can see that is basically that route has been used only one time from basically Italy to United States. And likewise, most of them are flown once or twice, but there is a very specific segment here from Austin to San Francisco, which is flown almost 565 times, which is unusually high. So from a corridor traffic standpoint, this particular corridor would be something interesting for them to look at. And likewise, if you look at, obviously, if people are moving from Austin to San Francisco, that we can similarly expect from San Francisco to Austin. And those details actually can be seen here. So where we see for each destination and origin station, we have the spend, and also the color indicates how many flights we have taken in that route. So we can see the same orange bar that which we have seen here is something basically covered in the section. So, and likewise, we can also see the similar section, which is in the same basically return journey. This is also almost taking 400 flights from the. So the point here is, yeah, there are many flights that have been going here and there, but if you want to focus on reduction of cost, so this particular corridor will be very interesting because a lot of our people are traveling from back and forth in these two cities, and immediately after that we have uh, uh, San Francisco. After San Francisco and Austin, we have something called a similar from San Francisco to Seattle. So these three cities themselves consider a major chunk of all their flights flights flown. So yeah, these three corridors is something that can be further looked into to reduce cost. So once we decide that, we can also further analyze by San Francisco. So people flights originating from San Francisco and see like where they are going towards, right? So we have seen one of them is Austin, and apart from Austin, there are a few other. So San Francisco is almost connecting to all the major cities in the US. That is number one, and a few destinations internationally. So but these are still not a major concern because they're almost flown once or twice. So that is another thing. But if at all we see any red flags here as well, red destinations, that will be another corridor for us to look at. So one international corridor which especially might be interesting is San Francisco to this one. San Francisco to UK. So this is also almost going about 120 flights have been flown. And this is also from an average cost standpoint. Since it is an international flight, it will cost most likely higher than a domestic routes. So this is how on a little further on the air overspend to analyze the routes and corridors where we can reduce costs. Before we move on, anyone wants to add anything else that you may have observed or anything else we could have done here, especially? Okay, got it. The major take.
Quick question, really, not additional thought, but a question is: see, what kind of analysis does this this chart, whatever we are seeing here, what does it offer? And yeah, that's the question. Any thoughts? Anyone?
If I have to answer it, so this particular chart in itself is not. This is more of like a supplementary chart, first of all, and it is helping us identify, as I said, 2 to 3 main aspects. That is, what are the main corridors in which the salespeople are traveling, and for them to identify that and where exactly maybe they can try to reduce the flights. For example, people we have seen are just flowing from San Francisco to Austin and back from Austin to San Francisco, which are forming a major chunk of our flights. So one of the things that is to identify such corridors. Fortunately, there is only one such corridor here in this case, but if there are any other frequent other corridors, so is to identify them, one thing that is bubbling up. And apart from that, there are lots of details that are hidden in these numbers themselves as to compare them against. I have not discussed them, but to compare the average prices for each of the destinations. Not necessarily that just because there are more flights doesn't mean that they are overspending. So in that case, the average transaction price or a ticket price that is between that corridor in that corridor would also help us get to some sense if that particular corridor is actually pricey or not. So which is something not directly present in the map, but it can be understood from the bar charts below. So here we can see the average price in this corridor is $150, whereas there are some other segments. If you see, obviously this is slightly priced at a higher range. Also, the factor that it is international travel, $800. So, and we can, and similarly, I think this is also international. Um, check. So yeah, so that is one other thing that we can see if the corridors are price or not.
Anyone else?
It majorly focuses on the cost aspects, either because if it is a highly traveled route or if it because the distance is longer, then it bubbles up that specific city up on the chart. So it's mostly either, yeah, it's mostly focusing on the cost. It allows us to see where we are spending more, but it doesn't allow us to see exactly if we're overspending or not, is what I felt.
So how would we identify if we are overspending?
So there could be, say, for example, on a specific route, what is the average fare versus what is the fare that we have paid in average? There could be one sort of a comparison to see if we're overspending or not. Or we can see, so what is the max amount we have spent on a specific fare versus so how it is on that route, stuff like that. So that would actually show us if we're overspending or not. And if we are booking our tickets a little bit in advance, the price would change, stuff like that. So if we have the price history, that data is not here, but if we have it, we can probably make some sense out of this information that we have for bookings that we have made to see if we have actually overspent or not. Yeah.
When you said average ticket price, you meant average ticket price outside of the company,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Not the stuff that we have spent.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Okay, all right. And also, I think we can also look at not just the average price, but also what's the average price, let's say 15 days from, from the time of travel, right? 30 days from travel, etc. So that way, and also we can also look at what's the average gap between the time of booking to the travel time. That also gives us a very good indicator of how, in what urgency are we booking. And I think if we just look at that particular the map kind of a thing, usually we feel, in fact, yesterday one interview candidate was telling me how visual analytics makes it a lot more easier for you to understand data. Right, this is one case where visual analytics doesn't seem to help much. The gap between maybe just a table, right, versus this visual analysis in this chart alone, right, isn't adding much, is what I'm thinking. What are you, any thoughts, anyone?
It's kind of too much information in one. It's a bit difficult to analyze visually, but if we can probably split that out. I don't know. We have to think about it, but yeah, it might help if it is split out a little bit.
Even that vector that basically San Francisco to Austin, the one that we saw, right? While we have isolated it, but even with the isolation, we know where San Francisco and Austin are located, right? So beyond that, I think it's not giving any additional information unless you like mouse over it and all of that. Yeah, I'm not so sure. With mouse over, Jagdish, what's the information it's showing?
It's just number of flights from destination to.
Okay, the number, right? So that's what it's showing. Okay. See how on that tooltip also there is hardly any additional information, right, except for the number.
One thing that the map will help us identify is we see that San Francisco we are spending a lot. When we are starting from San Francisco, we can see like where we are flying from San Francisco to which locations. So
and visually analyze, you can mouse over and keep going down and
which otherwise will be very difficult.
Yeah,
I mean, we can get the list of it in a table, but it wouldn't make much sense the table will not give you the same amount of clarity as to how spread out these destinations are when it comes to a map.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
One more difficulty with this kind of bookings for salespeople is, I'll tell you a small incident, because my cousin is a salesperson for Caterpillar and he typically travels now, to most cities. Once, few months back, he came to Hyderabad for closing a deal. He was here for one day. He had booked the return ticket same night. The deal didn't, the meeting didn't go as expected. He asked the company to cancel that evening flight ticket and put it on the next day afternoon. Then the next day morning also it didn't happen as expected. He again asked them to cancel it and then move it to next day night. And he finally went just on time to catch the flight. Because of the decision making unit is bigger and there are lots of steps involved on B2B sales. It's a huge investment, capex investment, all that stuff happens. So the cancellations is also one big part, when it comes to this kind of salespeople ticket booking stuff. So that is also another piece which we can get info about when we are talking about flight bookings.
This kind of data does help in negotiating with the airline companies, right? So to
Yeah.
say, okay, this is how much we are spending, or
Yeah.
these are the kind of terms that we need from you, right? So many businesses that travel a lot, right? So that is the quote unquote the business class, a part of which is the maybe bigger seats, which is what we see regularly. But also part of it is the flexibility that they get, so that they can book when they want.
Yeah.
I think there are many options there, so people can even go show up and then tell them, hey, I need a ticket now, and they will give those tickets and so on and so forth, right? So
And for
that kind of
rescheduling or cancellation, it's just $500. But for us, the whole amount will go if we do it
correct.
retail.
So they'll give you something back a
Yeah.
little bit.
So moving on. So car rentals, there is a tab on this one, but let me, in the interest of time, I'll come back to this later. Just we also know that car is not a big spend for the people. And also one of the reasons is I went through these quickly, if you would notice, the major cars that they are using for frequent travel. The third, this particular bar chart on third shows us I'm sorry, the second one shows us basically how frequently they use these cars, and we can see the average cost for the ones that they use is already almost on the lower end. Now they are not using highly expensive cars. So that way, there is nothing much to optimize here is what, and that to their car spins already slow. So I'll come back to this if we have some time left towards the end, but I'll go to hotels now, which is their second most spend. And I'll quickly go through the charts and then we'll start discussing them. So here we have a simple scatter plot. I think on the x-axis is always mostly average price per the night stay, and how many stay on the y-axis we have how many stays we have done in that particular hotel, or here in this case city, how many total stays. And the size of the bubble represents the total cost that we incurred first. So we can clearly see Seattle is placed on this particular here, and anything on the top right corner or in this quadrant, if something lies in this section, that means it's a red flag for us. And or if nothing is there as close to this, but whatever that is closest to this particular area is something that we need to look into. So that's what this setup of scatterplot means. And anything in this quadrant, they have almost nothing to worry about. And we can see in the cities, the same few cities that which we have discussed during the this is completely for hotels, but so same cities that which we have identified in air travel, they bubble up here as well. So San Francisco, Austin, New York, London, and Seattle. Seattle is another similar city. So these are almost top 5 cities where they are seen. And Seattle, from this standpoint, if you would notice, their spend is high. At the same time, their average cost is not that high as London or New York. So that means it's still, though we are spending more, we are spending more because we are traveling there more. It's not because this hotel, the city itself is pricey in terms of hotels. So whereas when it comes to New York and London, it is telling us that though we are spending less, but the transaction that we are, the average, obviously, as it shows in the graph, they are slightly pricier than Seattle. So we'll come.
Just to confirm,
Uh-huh.
so basically, this is by city, right? Where that's the destination city. This by the
That's the
chain.
hotel.
This is not related to air travel anymore, Chaitanya.
No,
So,
so this is hotel, right? This is hotel, I understand.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
This
this
is
is, but
city, hotel,
but
hotel
still
city.
this is, the destination as in where they stayed, right? The place where they stayed.
I think correct.
Right.
Yes.
So they go
Makes
by
sense.
the plane and then they stay there, isn't it? Okay. So and this one is by the chain, right? So which company, right? Like for example, Taj or whatever, Lemon
Correct.
Tree, that kind of a thing. And this is the exact city. This is the exact city or the exact place where they stayed. Is that what it is?
Correct. City,
Which is distributed?
It's the
chain,
combination.
and branch.
Branch. Okay. Got it. Okay. Please continue.
Yes. So these are the three main charts, and here we have same average price per night across each month, and we can see there are some months which are slightly more expensive, mostly in December, etc., etc. It's slightly getting pricier, and we can expect that typically people used to go for all vacations and might use that may have cost the price, but let's that's something that we will try to focus on the other three charts. So we have noticed these three cities or these 4-5 cities which are of our interest, and what we have here on the right hand side is almost like a box plot, but it's showing the same information as a box plot. It's not looking like a general box plot would be used to. So we have on the x-axis and y-axis, and all these different colors are the quartiles. So basically the green is the lower 25%, and the red is the top 25% quartile. And what we see here is there we can obviously, as I said, anything towards top right is something a matter of concern for us, and we can look. So that is something that we will know which hotels are basically more costly for us. Anything that is on the x-axis towards the right, it's the most expensive for us. So this particular hotel, though we visited it on very less times, we visited almost like only 4 times. I'm sorry, 4 people have visited for one night, but it is still on a very expensive even for that stay. And couple of things that we will try to know here is basically whenever we are staying at a particular hotel, it will give us the y-axis will give us basically what is the typical duration that we will stay at that hotel. So here for Novotel, whenever we typically go, we tend to stay almost like 3 nights in a consecutive manner. So that is on an average basis, and within Novotel also we can see. So once we identify what are the priciest branches, etc., within that we can see what are the special branches which are most costly. So we can see here the London one are standing out, London and New York ones, which are tending to be more pricey, whereas other ones maybe somewhere in some other cities, which are maybe not be that similar to New York and London, they are on a slightly lower end. Let me see. Couple of I'd be happy to hear your thoughts, but yeah, so the way these interactions are designed, they help bubble out a lot of questions to be answered. So for example, if I am let's say there is this particular hotel where I'm spending a lot, I can this particular chain, and I can look like what all cities do I normally go to when I'm staying at this hotel, right? So, and this particular one mostly in Seattle and etc. And this is mostly also relatively cheaper for me to stay at when compared to the other hotels that we have seen on the right. So we can also try to take decision in terms of wherever we are staying. For Novotel, we are seeing London, New York, or something that which are costly for us. So we can, whenever we go to these cities, we can try to avoid Novotel or maybe this particular hotel, and maybe look for some other options within that particular cities. So that is something possible. And in London also, if at all we want to look at what are the cheapest hotels that are available for us, I can do a likewise and see what are the ones that are falling up until here. And if at all we have to stay in London, we can also choose these hotels which are slightly lower than other costlier hotels. So all these sort of questions can be answered with the help of these interactions. But yeah, if there is anything else you think we could have done better, just let me know. We will try to move on to something interesting. Okay, what we'll do is let's actually move on. So there is a specific story that they have done, especially from this hotel analysis that which we have just seen. So, and just a couple of disclaimer points here. So this particular story, what we will see here, I don't want you to take it with very specifics, but I just want you to understand the approach that they have taken. Because a lot of the conclusions that we get from here are not directly related to the data, but there are some context related to the business also that has been that will go into these conclusions. So yeah, so this is a very specific case that I want you to remember. And the idea is to basically just go through some of these specific cases as we progress across multiple KKSS sessions, so that we get more familiarized with the analysis and the approach of analysis that they have taken. Here in this specific case, what we have seen here is, so we have understood this chart, and there are three main cities which we have identified as matter of concern for us: Seattle, London, and New York. And for Seattle, what they seem to have done, again, some context here. This is the context which this particular business that which we are currently, the data for which we are looking at, is telling that they don't have a working branch in Seattle, and that is why maybe people who are people are frequently traveling to Seattle. There are more clients maybe for them, they are traveling there, and that's why they have to stay in a hotel. So they are now suggesting that to reduce the costs here. We know that it is not pricey. Seattle is not pricey. That's why as compared to London and New York, but it is still taking a lot of costs because they have to travel more to Seattle to take care of the business needs. And that's where they are suggesting that to reduce these costs, given that context, they are suggesting why should not we try out a local sales team which will stay in Seattle. And remember, by the way, this is just hotel costs which we are looking at, but Seattle, if you remember, it's also one of the top cities and destinations where we have seen which is incurring higher air travel costs as well. So all of those costs can be reduced if we look for a local sales team, is the conclusion which these people have seen to derive. So this is a slightly different case. But when it comes to London, it's again a slightly different case. The context here is they already have a branch in London. So what can they do to reduce the costs here? So they cannot take similar approach as Seattle. So they already have a branch, but still the costs are higher. So two things that could have happened is London is taking costs because either it is, one thing is, we obviously know it's pricey, and the other thing that they have also seen is it is on the number of hotel stays, it is also not that very low on the y-axis, right? It's almost second next to Seattle in terms of number of hotel visits or hotel stays. So the question comes here is from the context again. Though we can expect that Seattle is having so many visits because it doesn't have a local team or local branch, but London having one of their most maybe sort of a big branches or headquarters, why is it having almost second number of hotel stays? So that is the question that raises from this context. And this requires a further investigation or drives a direction of thought that what can the London team basically do, because they already have a team there. How can they help to reduce the people who are traveling to London and hotel stays and staying in hotel. So this is a different route that they need to take for this city to reduce the cost there. And there is one other case we'll take, New York. The context here is we know that it's already pricey from the average hotel price per night. And their also context here is they're expecting that it will more likely grow in terms of their clients that they have. They are hoping if the number of visits will increase here, it will be far worse than Seattle and London put together. So that is why they are trying to minimize costs given the condition that that client base is increasing in New York. And what they have done is the following analysis for New York. They try to identify of all the visits the people stay at in New York hotels, how many people visit typically, or how many rooms do they need, and is something that they are looking at. Let me just get something. Correct. Most simultaneous visits. So basically it can, in other words, it says like at max, there are 4 people visiting to New York at a single time. Otherwise, there are not more than 4 people visiting to New York at any point in time in the past 2 to 3 years. So this is something that they have identified, and what they have proposed is something from this data. They have proposed that since at max we only need 4 people, and that too it's only one particular instance. If you ignore this outlier, consider outlier, and there are at max only we need only, if I'm not wrong, 2 people at max. So almost all of these cases simultaneous visits are only 2. So what they are suggesting is basically since at max there are almost 4 people, and most of the time 99% of the time they're only visiting 2 people, why don't we have, instead of booking hotels for them, why don't we just purchase a serviced apartment and pay the rent for that, so that these 2 people, and that too for only 2 people, service apartments that can accommodate 2 people, and based on the price for that service apartments, the average cost is in New York is about, for serviced apartment is $300 per night, and if you take it for 2 people, it will be $600 per day, so that we have to pay on average. So this particular line is the average cost that we will pay if you go with a serviced apartment for 2 people, whereas this is the price that which we are paying as the situation that is right now. So on an average, we're paying $815 per day if we go with the accommodations, hotel bookings. So that's a difference of about $250 per working day or per stay, and in a year that will add up to about $50,000 to $60,000, and that is a huge amount given the cost that this New York is incurring. Since on a yearly basis it is incurring about $90,000, and if we can save some $50,000 just by looking at some service apartments for these 2 people, that will first of all meet all the requirements that the salespeople need, and it will also save some costs. So this is something that which they have come up for some different approaches for different cities, depending upon the context which we have discussed.